controversial.
It's
What do you
very
want to say?
interesting because this is the kind of opinion of late it will get you cancelled. How do you go from a 7 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10 in the workplace?
My simple mantra for being an MVP is to மூடிட்டு வேலையை பாரு.
Being a 7 out of 10 is what you should at least be at in your job. If you're not there, then you should seriously get better.
A 7 out of 10 employee will do well, will be happy at their job. A 9 out of 10 employee is a lot more chaotic. They will try to outstretch their boundaries.
I think what you said can be summarized as accepting the status quo and challenging the status quo.
You have a problem statement at work. If it keeps you up at night, then that is what pushes you.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of OK Boomers. As usual, I have Alien Ashwin and Body and a very special guest in the house. I think he's also our first guest on OK Boomer. It almost feels weird to call him a guest because we were just chatting off the record about how he is one of us, family, green circle, whatever you want to call it. Sanjeev NC, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much. I really want to know what green circle is. Like, if I'm not part of it yet, I want to be part of it. Sounds fun.
Okay, that's you're on brand for an OK Boomer podcast because you don't know what a green circle is. So there is this cool app called Instagram. You can add people to your green circle.
Oh, okay.
Close friend.
Very boomer explanation. What's it, Chief?
Well, actually, I really didn't know because I'm not using Instagram regularly. But okay, thanks for that. That's a new thing I learned.
Oh, wow. I thought
The last
Instagram
time NC Sanjeev used Instagram did not have green circle.
Oh, okay. Cool. So, what are we here to talk about? A very much needed topic, like a lot of topics that we do, but perhaps bordering on the controversial. How do you go from a 7 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10 in the workplace? Before we get into the nitty gritty of the discussion, Ashwin, perhaps you want to clarify what we want out of this episode and what do we mean when we say somebody is a 7 out of 10 and 9 out of 10?
Okay. Okay. I don't think you gave me heads up on the question, but in my thoughts, I would say being a 7 out of 10 is what you should at least be at in your job, right? Like if you are not there, then you should seriously kind of get better. That is the minimum expectation from anyone who's working, from the company or even for yourself. You should have at least that expectation. If not from your manager, if not from your organization, if you are not at 7, then you should seriously consider if that's where you want to be. Like if you're not able to get there even after trying for a good amount of time, that's different conversation, right? But what we are really going to focus today is on, yes, I can do this. I am at a minimum threshold of doing this. I'm able to do this, but how do I become 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10? I think that's where we are, which in our kind of world in Freshworks, we would say like, become world class, right? You should really become world class in what you do. And there are people who do things at 7 out of 10. What differentiates two set of characteristics, or what can an individual do or a person do? I think that's what we are going to kind of deep dive on. And Sanjeev being here is actually a good example because he's like 7 out of 10 in a lot of things, 10 out of 10 in a few things. So he can also kind of add a lot of how he does it. It'll be good to validate our thinking with him also.
Yeah, I think that's a nice segue for Sanjeev to come in and share.
Okay. So my take on the topic is which is great, and I like the fact that you have 7 out of 10 and 9 out of 10, so it's easy to quantify. So let's look at it from the outcome side, right? A 7 out of 10 employee will do well, will get promoted, will get a good salary, will be happy at their job, and will probably just keep going on that path and just like coast. A 9 out of 10 employee is a lot more chaotic, is what I feel. They will, a lot of times, they will try to outstretch their boundaries. They'll try to break beyond what they're supposed to do. In the process, they are going to be upskilling at a super fast level. If they're in the right place, they might also be like that might reflect in their promotions, in their salaries, in like the typical rise up the org structure. But beyond that, a 9 out of 10 employee is simply like trying to shake things up and trying to like question a lot of things that exist and trying to reimagine a lot of things that exist, right? So 9 out of 10 employee to me is the kind of employee who's changing the way things operate, whereas a 7 out of 10 employee is operating at that existing environment at an acceptable and sometimes even like at that exceeding expectations level. But a 9 out of 10 employee is just like trying to shake things. So to me it's a double-edged sword, depends on where you are. If you're a 9 out of 10 employee at a wrong place, it might actually backfire for you. But if you're in the right place and if that environment is conducive for you, you might be like you might be on a good path.
Absolutely. Two things. So one is, I think what you said can be summarized as accepting the status quo and challenging the status quo. That's an important distinction that you are making between the two. And another is it's very environment specific. So what we speak is, say, a fast growing, even SaaS startup. It's very specific to this environment. Our ratings, our scale, whatever it is, right? And anywhere else, even our own qualities can be just defined as rebellious or not towing the company line, and we could be labeled as a 3 out of 10 as well. So again, I think that's an
Rebellious.
important disclaimer to
Yeah.
put out. But what we
I'll
are
add
speaking.
to what NC said and say that like the 9 out of 10 redefines the scale, right? So what is 7 out of 10 today? If there are enough nines in the company, that 7 will become a 5, that 7 will become a 0 at some point, because the nines are the ones who are pushing the boundaries and
Yes.
taking the scale up. So you need constant reimagination, or you need to recalibrate every now and then, and somebody has to push you in the right and the forward direction, and that is the set of people who are in the 9 and 10s. Like the definition of a star is, you can see that star like from millions of miles away, right? Like somebody whose work speaks for themselves. Like you don't need anything else. Like you can see the quality of their work and it speaks for itself.
Mm. So
Thanks. I think we
the
have
environment thing like brought one
Mm.
thing to my mind. Like sorry, Chris. So we usually say, at least in our circles, right? Being in our rating system in corporate world, right? There's 3, 4, and 5 is what we usually go by. So 7 and 10, you just convert it and see. So being 3 is equal to 7, 8 and 9 is 4, and 10 out of 10 is different. Like you're just exceptional, like body said, is your star. So being 8 or a 9 out of 10 is actually in your hands. Like being 10 out of 10, I would say depends on a lot of circumstance, scenarios, environment. Things has to fall in place for you. You should be in the right place at the right time, like people say. So a lot of those should fall in for people to be a 10 on 10. Like it's not just in your hands. Like the world has to, what do you call, like pray for you, and
Yeah,
like things
I
should
think
happen
that's
in
why
time.
like we've also stopped the scale in our episode
That's
discussions
why
at
we are
9.
talking about 8 and 9, because at least coming to 9 and 8 is in your hands. Like do not put it on circumstance, scenarios. Hey, like it's not going to work for me, I'm not in the right place. That is for 10. Like you can say that for really getting to 10, but 8 and 9, I would say, is in your hands. You can still try. Like
Yeah.
don't stop with fate not giving it to you.
Yeah, I think we have
Like
nicely set
episode,
the stage for how we are looking at this episode.
like
And
how
we
we
have,
could have edited episode 8 and 9 by ourselves.
I
Okay,
think,
inside joke. I don't get it.
I didn't either. I don't think it's an inside joke.
So much.
it's,
Maybe you're not on the inside, Chris.
it's
I'm
a
not part of
green
the green
circle
circle.
joke between Body, Ashwin, and Shankar,
Yeah.
which Ashwin also didn't understand. So it's a green circle joke between
So
Body and
it's a
Shankar.
joke by body for body. He is the only one in the circle. The circle is the dot now.
Okay,
Anyway,
I'll also
so
like when Sanjeev was saying his point, like pushing boundary, thinking, creating, innovating. I was also thinking one more thing that was little polarizing in my head. Actually, going from 7 to 9, like I understand you have to push, get creative, innovate, but at times just going from 7 to 9 is actually a little boring thing of doing things consistently. You will have to do the same thing over and over and over again to get better. Like yes, a 9 out of 10 employee is different, but as a person, like if you want to develop your own skill set, right? Hey, I am in a particular skill set, I am at 7, I want to become 9. That actually could be a little boring thing. Like you should just keep doing things over and over and over and again for a long period of time for you to be there. So Like
It takes a lot of depth getting there.
yep. Like it might not be fun, but you have to be consistent and repetitive and do the boring things to get there.
Like Body said, that's what sets you up for being that star that can be seen far away.
Once you go to
It's
nine,
just,
once like nine
yeah.
people go there,
Yeah, then
immediately
that
that nine
becomes
becomes
the
a
new
seven.
normal.
So, what are some of the qualities we are looking at? Say, we have established the bare minimum is 7 out of 10. What are some qualities you have seen in people or qualities that you have aspired to cultivate in yourself that helps you become that star?
I will say one quality is how obsessed you can be about the problem itself, right? So the ones who push themselves are the ones who are losing sleep over a problem, right? Like you have a problem statement at work. If it keeps you up at night, then that is what pushes you, right? Like if you are okay with the problem existing, if you are okay with, you know, having a good night's sleep and doing it later, then that automatically doesn't give you the drive to push yourself.
It's
What do you want
very
to say?
interesting because this is the kind of opinion off late it will get you cancelled, right? So you talk so much about work-life balance. Hey, I don't want to bring work to home, but if you actually look back at some of the most successful people that we look up to, they are people who think about their problems
Nobody,
beyond.
I'm not advocating for not sleeping. I'm just saying you
Yeah.
sleep, but then your sleep will be disturbed. It will haunt you in your dreams.
No, see the thing is it's almost like when you're an early stage employee, right? Especially when you're early stage, you have to be obsessed because that's the only way where you'll find solutions. Because if let's say 10, 15 years down the line, you've kind of almost seen what is to do out there. So there is not a lot of finding, there's a lot of just applying. Like you know that okay, there are 5 potential solutions, let me just pick one. But in the early stage, if you're not obsessed, you're not going to go that extra 1-2 mile because you'll only wait for someone to give you the solution so that you can go apply it. But your 9 out of 10 employee is obsessed, and hence they will find answers, sometimes even better answers than what is already out there.
Yep.
Yeah, that
I think
actually checks out with an exact advice I heard from one of my first bosses at Plenty. If you're not obsessed about the problem all the time, somebody else who's obsessed about it will eventually, you know, progress better than you in the long
Applies
run.
to software products also.
Yeah.
yeah,
It
because I
applies
think
to
that's the
sports. So that's one of my favorite quotes. Like you practice every day, right? Like if you don't practice, you will meet a person who practices every day, and that day they will win.
Yeah.
that's the I think
Afghanistan
I've
or
seen one
Australia.
interview. No, I've seen one interview between ABD and Kohli, where ABD says he's like they debate about who's born with talent and who developed talent. ABD is like I don't practice a lot. Like I can play. It's just my game is very different. But Kohli was like I wasn't gifted like ABD, but I had to practice to
Yeah.
be like him. Right?
Conor, oh, what's that? Conor McGregor, he also says this. I'm not talented, I'm obsessed.
Yep.
That's
Now you cannot say Kohli is not talented, right? Like he's just done that enough number of times for him to get that. Yeah, I was actually trying to say
Okay, coming
something,
back
but
to cricket.
so yeah, like Sanjeev said one thing that was I totally forgot. Let's. I wanted to say this point for a long time, but both of you kept interrupting. I forgot what I wanted to say.
He was talking about how the obsession will create like better solutions or help you
Yeah. So
find.
one thing I want to say was, see, Sanjeev mentioned about someone who will like wait for things to be said and someone who will go after and solve, right? That actually I would say is the difference between 7 out of 10 and 9 out of 10 employee for a company. If you are always told what to do and you are doing it, you are still doing the job. Like for a manager, for a company, for the org, hey, yes, you are paid for something, you have some roles and responsibilities and you are doing it, it's fine, right? You are there. But a 9 out of 10 employee will not just do what they are told, they will do plus so many other things that ties to what you're obsessed with. Of course, if you are not passionate about something, if you don't have the interest, you will not tend to do so. A lot of these are tied, but you should not stop with what you're being told. Like you should you you should go after what you like, you should figure out what to do. That's what takes you to a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I think it's at different levels, right? Like, for example, you start with being obsessed over the problems, and there is a difference. Like, a 7 out of 10 employee will, like, it won't keep them up at night, but for a 9 out of 10 employee, it might. Next level is, okay, I'm obsessed with the problem. How do I find the solution? Like, a 7 out of 10 employee will wait to be told, a 9 out of 10 employee might just, like, go break some barriers and get it, like, find the solution. Now, the next part is actually implementing it, right? A 7 out of 10 employee might need all the possible resources. Like, they have a plan, and they are going to wait until they get all the possible resources to implement that plan, whereas a 9 out of 10 employee is going to get extremely creative of how they actually implement it, right? Like, if, let's say, if someone says that, okay, it's going to take 6 months for this to get done, a 7 out of 10 might say, you know what, it's going to take 6 months, so it's nothing that I can do. But a 9 out of 10 might actually find an alternative that might get them there in 2 weeks with some trade-offs and some shortcuts. So those are the traits where you're able to make the decision by yourself and not put everything up on the system, on the company, to say, okay, I tried everything that I could, and I'm still not able to get it done. So a 9 out of 10 employee will just see things through. They will see things through till the end, or they would have tried literally everything possible to see that through. Whereas 7 out of 10 employee might have tried what is just by the books, like in the rule book. If they have to do that, they would have done that, but they wouldn't have gone outside the rule book.
True.
A lot of high agency, I would say. So there is a Harvey Specter quote. We actually end up quoting a lot of Harvey Specter. It's just coincidence. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission when you want to get something done. Right? So
Okay,
Yeah.
even
so
if
Sanjeev and Body, like one question to both of you, because I know this characteristic is very similar to you, both of you here. What do you think about multitasking for a 7 on 10 employee to become a 9 on 10 employee? Can they do a lot of things and become 9 on 10? Or should they focus on something to become a 9 on 10?
I would say it. You need to build muscle first, because like everything at some point is muscle memory. Like if you have to do 10 things at once, you're not going to succeed at all 10 together, right? Like you need to practice doing few of those 10 things. Whatever comes naturally to you, whatever you are more equipped to do, do those first, and then build that muscle so that it becomes muscle memory in the back of your head, so that you can add more tasks and do multiple things. Some of it runs on autopilot, not all, right? So like if everything runs on autopilot, then that 7 out of 10 is, I mean, the 9 out of 10 stagnates to a 7 out of 10. Like it is only when you are doing something that you haven't done, or that you're learning something on, that you're actually exercising your brain, your muscle, all of that, right?
Okay, no, my thing is,
Multitasking.
yeah, I know I am 7 on 10. Okay, right now I am 7 on 10, and I'm trying to go 9 on, to get to 9 on 10, but I haven't
I
succeeded
would
yet.
focus on depth first, on say 2 3
That's
things before
like,
doing 10 things.
okay. What's your take, Sanjeev?
Okay, so for me, there are two kinds of people, right? Like, there are people who are naturally able to derive kind of knowledge from different things they do. So when you say multitasking, I hear I can do 10 different things, and then I can like add value to the company. Whereas you have set of people who can do one thing and one thing really well and then add value to the company. I just want to, am I getting that question right? Okay.
Yeah. So
I
my
am the
yeah,
first.
I'll make it simple, right? Does
Yeah.
doing 10 7 on 10 get me to someone who's equal to doing three things 9 on 10?
Okay. So I think the route from 7 on 10 to 9 on 10 is not with how many things you do. It's about how well you do it. So it's like, let's say if you're naturally a specialist, if you feel like for example, I think someone like Ashwin is a good example, where Ashwin's been talking to customers right from day one. Like, I worked with him when he was in sales, I was in pre-sales. And I know that Ashwin is that specialist kind of person where he loves talking to customers, and he will go deep in that, right? He's going to go figure out everything possible from there. Whereas I am a more multitasking generalist kind of person, where I've done that for 2 years, and I've done something else. Like, I've done product marketing for 2 years. I've done product management, I've done a bunch of things, because my natural calling is multitasking. Now, both of us might be 9 on 10 in what we do. It doesn't matter how we do. It doesn't matter if we do one things or 10 things. I think it's about how well we do those things. And one more thing about doing multiple things is that you can't, like, for example, you can't be like, I am in pre-sales, but then, like, 2 months down the line, I'm going to go do marketing, or I'm going to go do sales. Instead, you do something for at least 2 years before you build that muscle. I think anything before that, you're kidding yourself if you think that you're you're specialized in that. And yeah, I think I remember having this conversation with Krishna some time ago.
I'll
multiple
add one
times.
thing there, right? So I identify personally as a generalist. I will anyway do 10 things more
Yeah.
than do depth of 2 things. But over time, you have to realize that when you are working, it's not just about you. It includes and involves so many other people. So if you are trying to be a generalist when everyone else around you is not, and the environment is not conducive to be a generalist, it'll actually be a deterrent, right? So people get offended if you are not giving them full 100% of your time and
Yeah.
mind share to them. Like if you are only doing 1/10 of your work for somebody, they will feel offended that you're not giving 9/10, the remaining 9/10. You might be giving 1/10 to 10 different people, right? That also comes into play, which is why my advice would be to focus on depth first, and then once it becomes muscle memory, once you have that reputation that if you are even with 1/10 of your time and effort, you're still able to get quality work done, go ahead and do 10 things like that.
Yep, yep. And for all the listeners here, if you didn't know, it takes 10,000 hours. Like I think that's a study that is being done. It takes 10,000 hours to get specialized in something. Like any skill that you're trying to practice, be it sports or like at work, anything that you're trying, it takes 10,000 hours to get good at something, right? Which in terms of like days or years, if you say it's around 2 years, like what Sanjeev said. So unless you put in that effort, you won't really know if you can get to world class or no. So like don't try it for 1 or 2 months and then decide, hey, this is not my thing, or I cannot do this. It just doesn't
Coming
work
from
like that.
experience, 2 months into my pre-sales role, I wanted to be a developer. I went to my manager and said, I like coding, I want to be a developer. I'm so grateful that he just hit me on the head and said, just go do your job. I know what's good for you. I'm glad it turned out, because it is, especially early in your career, it is very tempting. Like someone else's job is very tempting, but just stick with your job for 2 years, and just that's when you'll actually know if you're good at it or not.
Wow.
I want to take the discussion in other directions. So we have established the traits, qualities. What about external variables? I think one of the qualities that easily helps you go from 7 to 9 is talking to a lot of people, learning from smart folks. I spend most of my time talking to people who have done what I'm trying to do for a good 7 to 10 years. That means I don't have to go and make a lot of mistakes on my own. Instead of trying to figure something, put in a lot of time and do this, I'm like, if I ask 3 people who have done it, I already established, oh, okay, this is the best way to do something. And obviously, my time to get something done reduces drastically. So, would you say going and building these organic relationships? I don't want to use mentorship because it's beaten to death as a word, but I found that to be extremely helpful. Like the perspective people bring in, a lot of it, once you have these conversations regularly with experienced folks, when you come back, you are still measured with a different pool, and you naturally tend to stand out simply because you bring in new perspectives that was taught to you by some of the more experienced folks.
I really don't have any thoughts there, but I have something very similar to what you're asking, but I let Body and Sanjeev go if they want to add something.
Okay, I'll answer based on what I understand from your question. So if I get it right, you're talking about the external inputs and trying to implement that within the company. Like external could mean from people, from other teams, or from things that you've read. Is that in the area of your question?
Yeah, more or less. So far we just talked about intrinsic qualities, right? Like there
Okay.
are
How
other
much
ways.
how much does the environment play a role in bringing a 7 to a 9?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a nice
I
way
think
to.
like that. I strongly believe in that, right? Because for me, the environment helped me a lot. Like personally, from my example, right? So when I was 2-3 years into like my work career, I applied to speak at conferences, and I had, like, looking back, that was not a very logical decision, because that is not what a 3-4 year experience employee would do. Like it's not something that's cut out for them. But because the environment was acceptable and they encouraged me to do it, I was able to actually do that. But let's say if it was a lot more, if it was an established organization, the first thing that they would have done is, okay, you need at least 10 years of work experience if you want to represent the company and talk at a conference. I mean, that is a more established structure. So there, the environment supported my case that okay, you can actually go represent the company and we'll support you. So that helped me from a random pre-sales engineer writing blogs on the company blog post to an industry person who's now representing the company and talking about topics at an industry level. So that pushed me from an internal local scale to a global scale. So the environment really matters. The only thing is, the environment is not in your control. I think someone trying to move from 7 to 10 should acknowledge that the environment is not in your control. You can only influence it to an extent. So yeah, I think the environment plays an important role. But I think, like Ashwin said, don't just leave everything to that, right? There's a lot of things that you can do by yourself, but the environment plays a role.
I'll tell you something there. So, like the particular point that you said, right? You can influence so much in controlling the environment. One thing that I can think of is like always play next level game, right?
Mm.
When I say this, hey, like you are currently in one level, like where you're thinking yourself as 7 on 10. Like think of what's 2 levels above you, right? Very similar example I can think of is when Kopich and then Saina Nehwal used to train, right? Like in Saina Nehwal's biography, there's a saying that she used to play with the same age under men's category, right, as the opponent. So that really took out all the opponents in women's category, right? When you play with someone who's very, very uh, like in a level far ahead of you, even 7 on 10 in that level is 9 on 10 in your level, right? So that's again an environment. So you're not controlling a lot there. Uh, a lot of even our early Freshworks days, we used to target Zendesk competition and Salesforce competition, right? It's just to kind of take out competitors in our level and our league. So think of 2 levels higher than you. What like in your career, what like I would say a senior specialist is doing or a principal engineer is doing, and if you are a early engineer kind of getting to 9 on 10, learn from them, look at what they are doing, try to do and try to be at their place. You will automatically become 9 on 10 in your level.
Actually,
So
I have
what?
a yes.
Go
Sorry,
on, finish your.
I have a question. So as a company, because I know that body is kind of the expert in this area, right? As a company, how do you project 9 out of 10 employees as like champions? Really, how do you tell people that these are the people that you should strive to be at? Because it's very easy for bad examples also to get popularity. So I think, as from let's say from like an HR standpoint, right? How do you make sure that the real 9 out of 10 employees get projected?
Controversial.
So if you need projection, then you are not a 9. Sorry. So the real 9s out of 10s are the ones who are working and who are already like recognized and uh, acknowledged as great at what they do. Right? Like
Okay.
there are
No,
two aspects to this. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, buddy. I'll probably add on to Sanjeev's question so it helps you answer better. So, what I understand when he says projection is right now there is no blueprint or playbook. We look at stars 9 out of 10s and we say, okay, they are really good. But how do the others get there? So, this air of invincibility is not great, right? Like you need more people who can get there. So, how do you tell A, B, C are things that you can actually follow what these people do and get closer to them?
My simple mantra for being an MVP is to மூடிட்டு வேலையை பாரு. So if you shut up and do your job, that will take you to greater heights than anything else. Like literally, the problem comes when, again, I said there are two parts to it, right? Like intrinsically, if you are doing this because you want it, like this is like the Harry Potter mirror of Erised and the Sorcerer's Stone analogy, right? Like only a person who doesn't want to use it will be able to get it from the mirror, right? So similarly, only a person who is not doing it for whatever aesthetics or like popularity and fame, who really wants to be good at their job will actually get there. So I think the company plays a larger role in making sure that it's not setting the right examples. It is by making sure that bad examples are not like kept on a pedestal, right? Like if
Yeah.
people try to cope and people try to build an aura around themselves, if what they're doing is wrong and stupid, the company should step in and say that what they're doing
Yeah.
is wrong and stupid.
Yeah. I think that's what I was getting to, because what tends to happen is, like, if you just join the company, you might look at certain things happening around you without that level of depth and assume that, okay, this is the 9 out of 10 employee that I should go after, but in reality they might be a 4 or a 5.
True.
Yeah. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
But I liked Body's dialogue. Shut up and do your work.
Okay. Let's end the episode with this. What are a couple of things that you should absolutely be avoiding for you to get there? Why are you all avoiding the question now?
We want to get there. Who's going? Yeah, I think we are just thinking the question, bot. So, because you asked in the other way, like I was summarizing what you should do, but you asked what you shouldn't do.
I would say top 2-3 things that you should avoid and not do are one, it is very easy to keep like doing the same thing and not realizing that you're not trying to change or you're not doing something differently. Like if you get stuck in a mentality that like something that has worked before, right? Like over time things evolve. Like if you're still stuck on doing the same thing the same way, that is a recipe for failure, because everything evolves, and at some point what you're doing, the process of what you're doing expires, and it's not going to take you forward, it's only going to take you back. So it's a mentality or a mindset shift that you need to acknowledge that what you know today may be outdated tomorrow. Like I grew up in school thinking Pluto is a planet. If I say Pluto is a planet today, I'm wrong, right? Like the number of states in India that I knew are not the number of states today. Like over time, things change, and you need to be ready to embrace that and be be mindful and acknowledge.
Okay, so the top thing that you should avoid is don't complain, which I think I've seen a lot of this happen, because the moment you complain, you are shifting the responsibility from yourself to either your team or your manager or your company. So the more you resist complaining, the better your chance of actually moving from a 7 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10.
Okay. For me, I would say don't settle. 7 on 10 if you think, hey, I am here, like this is good enough. It keeps me going. So why should I move to 9 on 10? You should really answer that question. That 7 on 10 will not be 7 on 10 for long. Like unless you personally try to be 9 on 10. By the time you get a 9 on 10, that 9 on 10 will be a 7 on 10, right? So the chances of that happening is also there. Do not settle for 7 on 10. Just try more, look for more things to solve. And like Sanjeev said, like when you have some complaint in mind, that's your opportunity. That's your opportunity to become 9 on 10. So it's not rocket science to figure out. All your frustrations, all your complaints are the opportunities to be 9 on 10. So it's up to us to be staying there or become 9 on 10.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. We discussed a lot today. What to do, what not to do. My favorite part is I thought we had a very good definition on what in our mind is a 9 out of 10. I feel that's very easy for somebody to emulate. Once again, putting out the disclaimer, this may not be relevant outside tech, outside SaaS, like a lot of things that we say. But thankfully, we are fortunate to have enough context in the ecosystem between the four of us to be able to point and say, hey, this is what has worked for us. This is what you should probably not do. This is what you aspire to be. I thought this was a fantastic discussion in that direction. Thank you for taking your time and doing this. And thank you, Sanjeev, for stepping up in Shankar Ganesh's absence as our impact sub. Really appreciate that. This could very well be your audition. You never know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was an audition. I would have be better prepared, but okay.
No, you did a fine job. as it is. You already beat us in the production value, so you're doing great.
I think
Thank you.
he's auditioning us. Be careful.
Yeah. So quick shout out before we wrap up. Sanjeev NC, one of the most imaginative, creative friends that we have. He has a company, Super Meme. Probably just take a 15 or 20-second elevator pitch to pitch in your startup before we wrap this up.
It's an AI meme generator that can turn text into memes. That's what it does.
You had us at AI. Thank you so much. Please check out Super Meme. Thanks everyone. Hope you found this discussion useful. We'll be back again with another episode of
Don't.
And
Okay.
whoever is watching, if anyone has any thoughts, comment please.
Yeah.
We would love to uh,
Share your
keep the
thoughts. Don't
conversation
forget
going
to
in
like,
comments.
share, and surprise.
Okay, all right. This is a very important topic that's always been very close to my heart. One of the things that you must do to get to 9.5, and whatever you want to call it is continue to make sure that your job reaches the right audience. A lot of time, what happens is a lot of folks would have told 100 things: work hard, do this, do that, operate at 2 levels higher, and all that stuff, right? But one thing that has always helped me, and I've seen people go to the next level or operate at that 9.5 is you need to be very sure who your audience is in whatever deliverable that you're doing. You could be in tech, you could be in product, you could be in finance, wherever we are, you could be in any type of company around the globe. Make sure that particular deliverable, you know exactly who your audience is. As long as you have the art and science to re-christian that deliverable to that right audience in a very SaaS world, call it ICP. That's exactly how you would probably get to the next level, in my opinion. So think about that. Every time you do something, do I need to make it really, really sharp at an executive level, or do I need to write a 6-pager to make sure that everybody within the organization understands? As long as you can do that, go up and down, and have the right level of information, nothing like that. What you avoid, some of the pitfalls. I think Body touched upon it a little bit, which was also in my head, right? Like, don't be redundant. Like, always look for what is the next thing that's happening around you. Always think about how are you and the whole organization, the whole ecosystem is going to evolve in the next 5 to 10 years. As long as you're able to sort of gauge that, maybe 5 years too long a time frame, 2 years, 3 years, gauge that. Don't sit like a rock. Don't assume that whatever you're doing right now is going to be what it is 6 months from now, 1 year from now. Continue to keep thinking. Continue to think about, even for like 5 seconds, how is the world going to evolve in the next 10, 15 seconds. That's going to set you up for success, in my opinion. So, in summary, be really, really sharp on who your audience is. Continue to evolve yourself, upskill yourself, be ready for the next challenge.